I thought it'd be helpful just to go over some of the key provisions both the House and Senate are working towards as they head towards year end and are attempting to pass retirement plan legislation under Secure 2.0. And when you look at what the House did back in March, they passed the Securing a Strong Retirement Act. The Senate has been working since the House passed that bill in committee. The Senate Finance Committee is responsible for that retirement plan legislation. And they've been working over the summer to get to a point where they can pass something out of committee. And that was done 2 weeks ago, I think on June 22nd. And it was unanimous, 28-0. And when you look at what the House did, that passed with overwhelming support. It was 414-5. So this sends a clear message that one, it's bipartisan, and that doesn't happen all that often these days. And two, the theme that they're trying to solve for is a coverage issue. And when I mean coverage, we've seen states already mandate retirement plans like California. There are other pendant states like New York and New Jersey and Maryland, Maine, to name a few, that are mandating small employers to start retirement plans. And that's a key piece of legislation that's trying to pass at the federal level. When we break it down, there's always a theme, and it's no different here. It's coverage. How do we get more plans started by employers? And it's particularly smaller employers that they're focusing on. And then how do we get those employees in those plans that they've created into the plans? And how do they get people into the plans that aren't contributing in existing plans? And how do you get more people to contribute more once they're in the plan? And then finally, how do you make that retirement plan savings last throughout their retirement? And there's 70 pieces of proposed legislation. I'm only going to focus on 10. And I think these 10 are relevant in everything we do on a day-to-day basis. I'll start with the employer tax credits. You know, prior to the Secure 1.0, for a new employer to start a retirement plan, they got $500 a year, and they got that for 3 years. The Secure Act 1.0 exponentially increased those credits. A smaller employer could get up to $5,000 a year for 3 years. And it's all based on the number of non-highly compensated employees. And then there's extra credits for automatic enrollment. But what they're doing with Secure 2.0 is supersizing those credits. They're going to expand them over 5 years. And what we'll see is up to 50 employees, I think it's proposed, you could get a dollar for dollar credit up to $5,000 for 5 years. Plus, they're proposing 100% credit on matching contributions up to $1,000 per year for non-highly compensated employees. Now, just imagine, smaller employer can't afford to start a plan and make contributions because we all know there's testing issues there. Now, a smaller employer can start a safe harbor plan with a match. And not only will they get the credits to basically start the plan over 5 years, they'll also get credits for some of the matching contributions. When you look at the Savers credit expansion, that's always been available. But the problem is you need a tax liability to get it. And it's only available to lower wage households with income, I think it's below $45,000. And that's at its height. And there's a max cap on that of $2,000, but you need that tax liability. Both the Senate and the House agree in increasing those compensation bands to get more people covered with these savers credits. And I really like what the Senate is proposing. They are proposing to change it from a credit paid in cash as part of a tax refund to a government matching contribution that would be required to be deposited into the plan. So a lot of common support there. Automatic enrollment with escalation, we're seeing in the House, they're proposing effective 1/1/2024 that all new retirement plans have a default rate at 6% and increase over 10%. Now, what's happening in the Senate is completely different, and it's basically creating a third safe harbor. They're calling it a stretch safe harbor, and the matching contribution under this new safe harbor would be 100% on the first 2%, 50% on the next 4%, and then 20% on the next 4%. So all in, if you're contributing, 8% or 10%, you're going to get a 4.8% match, which is higher than what you would otherwise get with a matching safe harbor contribution today. But what they're also doing is giving a dollar credit for the non-highly compensated employees up to 2%. So a lot of that credit, and it's going to be paired with an automatic enrollment provision. You would need to enroll at 6% and escalate to 10. So the Senate is sort of covering this in that we'll give you the credits, but you're also going to have to do a safe harbor, and you're also going to automatically enroll. The part-time workers participation, this is something that we're already living with, and it is law. The clock started in 2021, and it looks at 21, 22, and 23. And if you've got long-term part-time employees, and they define that as 3 consecutive years with more than 500 hours, you can no longer exclude those participants. And that's an issue for plans that have a year of service 1,000-hour requirement with long-term part-time employees. We're going to have to bring them in. What the House and the Senate are proposing with Secure 2.0 is to change that from 3 years to 2 years. So essentially, next year, you'd have to bring in those people. Student loan matching contributions. This would essentially allow for employees to save for retirement that otherwise would not be able to afford it because of student loan debt. It would allow those student loan repayments to receive a match as if they were elective deferrals. And there's support, common support, both at the House and the Senate. Expansion of catch-up contributions. The House is looking to go up to $10,000. They both, the House and Senate, agree on increasing the catch-up. They just have different ways of getting there. So up to 10 grand, ages 62 to 64 at the House. And then the Senate is an extra 10,000 started at age 60 per year. And the House is also proposing that all catch-ups be made in Roth. You'll no longer have a choice to do a pre-tax deferral. And it makes sense because the way that this legislation is being proposed, it's under a concept known as regular order. And what they need to do is, in order to pass this legislation, they need to generate new revenues to cover the expense. And this expense for this whole package is about $36 billion. So how do you generate income within the 10-year budget window? The way to do that is leveraging Roth contributions, because they'll recognize those taxes within that 10-year window, whereas pre-tax, more than likely you would see it outside that 10-year window. So we'll see a lot about Roth. In fact, the allowance of employer contributions, match or non-elective, both are proposing that you would be able to designate them as Roth contributions. Emergency fund access. This is something that the Senate's proposing, and it would allow an employee to take up to $2,500 penalty-free. So right now, if you're taking a hardship, you're assessed that 10% penalty if you're under 59 and a half. Here, not only would you avoid the penalty, you could repay it within 3 years, and you wouldn't be able to take another emergency fund distribution within that 3-year period unless you repaid the prior one. The increase of required minimum distribution, both agree on that. They just have different ways of getting there. The House is proposing that it's anyone turning 72 in 2022, they would have their first RMD at age 73. And then it would escalate to 74 in 2025 and then 75 in 2032. The Senate is just going right to 2032, and they're changing it to age 75. And then you've got the increased cash out threshold. Today, that's $5,000. They're proposing that be increased to $7,000. This is just 10 pieces of this proposed legislation. There are 70 pieces. And some of the things are really good, like the removal of a controlled group when you have unrelated entities with minor children. So this typically happens when you have owners of businesses that are unrelated, maybe a spouse and husband and wife. One's a doctor and one maybe has an online business, totally unrelated. Today, if there's a minor child, that minor child has attribution in both of those companies and creates a controlled group. That's something that I guess the IRS has really not enforced over the last decade. And it's something that they're looking to remove now. But technically it's law, and I'm sure there's many controlled group plans that are out there, and they have no idea. So thanks for listening. Have a great summer.